Umar Johnson's second wife. Okay?
Well,
and so
first wife, and then I would have had a second wife, like, chosen or what have you. So he wanted me, like, to be number one, and then we had a second wife because he wanted two wives. And fast forward, when I met him, automatically he was trying to eye me down, trying to be very sexual or what have you, made a couple of sexual advances.
Dr. Umar Johnson. Say that name out loud and watch what happens. It doesn't just sit in the air. It sparks reactions, strong ones. Some people lean forward with admiration, picturing a man who stands tall as a defender of black children, a warrior who refuses to bow, a voice that dares to challenge systems built to crush communities. But then there are the others, the ones who roll their eyes, muttering about a smooth talker dressed in kente cloth, spinning promises he never had the power, or maybe never even the intention to keep. That's the divide. He is either the beacon or the con, the savior or the salesman. And on this night in this live podcast, that clash of images was about to erupt in real time. It wasn't a soft setting with polite questions. Sitting across from him was Tasha K., a woman whose very presence promised no masks would remain intact. She doesn't ease into anything. She rips bandages off, exposes the wounds, and dares people to squirm. And next to her sat someone even more dangerous to Umar's carefully curated image, Anaya, Haitian-American activist, a psychology degree under her belt, respected in her circles, and carrying a story she had kept tucked away for years. This wasn't a scorned admirer or a bitter stranger. This was a woman who had known him for more than a decade, someone who had walked into his orbit and walked back out with her eyes wide open, and now she was ready to speak, steady, sharp, and unapologetic. She didn't play coy, didn't tiptoe toward the point. She went straight for the jugular. Eyes locked on the camera, voice calm, but with that undertone of old disgust. She dragged everyone back to 2012, the year her life intersected with his. She painted the scene in strokes that were both vivid and damning. A friend had introduced her to him, hyping him up as the next great leader, the man carrying Malcolm X's fire, a powerhouse who would change the trajectory of black liberation. The way people spoke about him back then, you'd think he was untouchable, destined, almost mythical. But myths rarely survive reality. She described that first encounter as the moment the glass shattered. She hadn't even exchanged more than a few words when the man in front of her showed his true hand. And it wasn't about community, children, or revolution. According to her, the very first words out of his mouth dripped with desire, not duty. She claims he scanned her like property, then, without hesitation, declared she should become his personal companion whenever he rolled into her city. It wasn't wrapped in romance, it wasn't even dressed as flattery. It was blunt, transactional, a proposition that made her skin crawl. Years later, retelling the moment, her voice still carried that sting. She recalled it word for word, how he told her, "You'll be my personal person whenever I come through." That was his opening line, his first impression, and right there, the polished hero figure the world thought they knew crumbled for her. In his place stood a man looking to own, not uplift. But Anaya wasn't the type to swallow disrespect in silence. She pushed back immediately, snapping the spell before it even began. She told him flat, "No, I don't accept this. I have a psychology degree too. You're not going to play with my emotions or my mind." She remembered the pause that followed, the way it caught him off guard. Then came the nervous laugh, the brushing off like it had all been some harmless joke. But behind that laugh, she swore she saw something else, recognition. He had just realized she wasn't pliable. She wasn't another follower waiting to be molded. She was a wall he couldn't climb, and he knew it. From that night on, she said, the mask had already slipped. She had seen the man behind the fiery speeches, the one who thrived not on community liberation, but on control. She carried that knowledge silently for years, but on this podcast, she was done holding it in. As her words spilled, the live chat exploded. Some typed, "Finally, someone said it." Others threw in endless shocked emojis, watching the legend of Umar Johnson collide with a story that sounded too specific, too raw to be fabricated. And then she dropped the line that froze the room. "From the very beginning, Umar came at me sexually. It wasn't about uplifting me, it was about trying to use me." She said it plain, steady, like someone delivering testimony, not gossip. And that delivery mattered. It wasn't shouted in anger, it was given with calm certainty, which only made it harder to dismiss. Even Tasha K., infamous for her quick retorts, leaned back for a moment, letting the weight of it land. But Anaya wasn't finished. She widened the lens, pulling another figure into the frame, the very friend who had first introduced her to Umar. According to Anaya, that friend didn't just get close to him, she got consumed by him. She left her husband, abandoned her home, and gave up her entire stability just to move near Philadelphia and orbit Umar. She became one of several women who had done the same, forming what Anaya described as a polygamous circle around him. To her, it wasn't coincidence. It was a pattern, a pipeline. Women drawn in by his speeches, hypnotized by his charisma, sacrificing everything to become another name in his private roster. She shook her head on camera, recalling how her friend had surrendered everything to be wife number 3, 4, or 5. And while others fell into the trap, Anaya said she kept her distance. She kept things cordial, but always at arm's length. She never gave him her address, never opened her door, never allowed him access. I was cool, she explained, but I wasn't going to give him any play. I already saw the game. I saw what happened to women who submitted, and I wasn't about to be one of them. That was her unspoken contract with herself, and ironically, the very thing that earned Umar's reluctant respect. She believed he only respected boundaries when they were enforced with strength. If a woman caved, she became a pawn. If she resisted, he stepped back, and that dynamic became their silent language. Nearly a decade passed. The story might have stayed buried in her memory, if not for 2021, when Haiti fell into chaos. Her people needed voices, advocates, and somehow Umar's name came up as the man they wanted to hear.
This man, our first conversation was basically like, I'm gonna F you. I don't know what I can say on your show, and
Yeah, you can say it.
I'm gonna fuck you. Then you're gonna be my fuck person in your town because I travel a whole lot.
Despite everything she knew, despite that sour first encounter, she picked up the phone. Not for him, but for her community. She explained this on the podcast with a clarity that silenced doubters. It wasn't about romance. It wasn't about Umar. It was about duty. My people wanted his voice. So I called, and here's the twist that stunned the audience. When she dialed, he answered immediately, as if waiting. No hesitation, no awkwardness, just instant access, like the past had never happened. That detail set the chat on fire. Viewers couldn't wrap their heads around how the same woman who had rejected him in 2012 was the one calling him nearly 10 years later. But Anaya shut that speculation down. She knew who he was. She hadn't forgotten. She just put her pride beneath her people's needs. The irony cut deep. In public, he was still the fiery leader communities called on. In private, she remembered the man who once propositioned her without shame. That split image haunted the story, and she wasn't done. Looking directly into the camera, she asked the question that made everyone pause. If he did this with me, how many others are out there? How many more women have the same story but are too afraid to say it? The comments slowed. The joke stopped. Even Tasha K went quiet, because in that moment it stopped feeling like entertainment. It began to sound like testimony of something bigger than one woman's experience. Fast forward again, May 18th, Haitian Flag Day. Umar showed up in Brooklyn just as promised. He posted the flyer on Instagram, appeared in person, and stood shoulder to shoulder with Anaya before the crowd. For many watching, it was shocking to see them side by side, the woman who once resisted him now sharing a stage with him. And here, Anaya dropped another unexpected layer. She admitted that seeing him again stirred something she thought she had buried. She confessed she still carried love and respect for him, even though she was married to another man. The contradiction was raw, respect tangled with betrayal, attraction laced with disappointment. It made the story alive with tension. But the heart of this saga wasn't romance. It was brick and mortar, or at least what was supposed to be. For years, people had asked about the FDMG Academy in Wilmington, Delaware. Donations had flowed in, promises had been shouted, but where were the classrooms, the desks, the children? Anaya wanted to see for herself, so she drove to Delaware, expecting at least a glimpse of progress. Maybe half-finished classrooms, maybe a skeleton of a school on its way. What she found instead, she said, was a hollow shell. Umar himself walked her through it like a salesman, pointing at decayed walls and calling them future classrooms, gesturing at empty space and swearing it would one day be full of children's laughter. The air reeked of mildew, the windows were missing, the floors were rotting, yet he narrated the tour as if he were unveiling a thriving institution. She remembered the chill that ran through her. In that moment, she realized she wasn't looking at an educator. She was standing in front of a dream merchant selling visions that had no foundation. And just when it seemed like the humiliation couldn't deepen, she revealed the twist that made her blood run cold. During that same visit, as she helped clean up, spraying Windex and trying to lend support, Umar suddenly went live on social media. At first, she didn't even realize she was on camera. Then, in front of tens of thousands of viewers, he swerved the conversation toward polygamy, relationships, the supposed power of multiple wives, and then, with her standing right beside him, he started hinting that she was about to become one of them. That memory, she said, burned into her mind. It wasn't just about the FDMG Academy anymore. It was about being used as a prop in real time, turned into a character in his narrative without her consent, paraded in front of followers as if she were already part of his circle. And with that revelation, the podcast chat exploded again. Supporters scrambled to excuse it as harmless talk. Critics typed furiously, calling it the final confirmation of everything they had long suspected. But through it all, Anaya remained steady, her voice unwavering. She wasn't ranting. She wasn't bitter. She was simply laying bare what she had seen, what she had lived, and what she refused to be silent about any longer. The story wasn't over. She made sure of that. But even in just this opening testimony, the damage was done. Umar Johnson's name was no longer floating above in abstract debates. It was tied to concrete details, lived experiences, accusations spoken with the clarity of someone who had nothing to gain and everything to lose by telling the truth. And as the audience sat there, caught between shock and disbelief, one thing became painfully clear. This wasn't gossip anymore. It was a reckoning. Next thing she knew, Umar was talking like the future had already been decided. Not in whispers, not in private, but right there in front of the camera, live for the world to hear. He began weaving sentences that placed her as wife number one, while another woman, someone she didn't even know, was casually slotted into the role of wife number two. She gave a quick laugh when retelling it on the podcast, but beneath the laugh was something heavier. You could hear the weight of embarrassment clinging to her words like a stain she couldn't wash away. She explained that she hadn't gone to Delaware with any idea of being put in that position. She thought she was showing up to help, maybe clean a little, maybe help plan some event details, nothing extraordinary. But suddenly she was thrust into a storyline she never wrote for herself. Live on his stream, her image was being tied to a fantasy she never agreed to. The chat went wild. Fire emojis, laughing faces, endless lines of queen comments scrolled faster than the eye could track. People clipped the stream, ripped screenshots, DMs poured in. Within minutes, her name was dragged into the center of Umar's polygamy spectacle. She sat on the podcast couch, eyes calm but voice sharp, recounting the absurdity of it. I never said yes. I was never even asked, she told Tasha, and yet suddenly I'm wife number one in his fantasy. My image was stolen, branded into a story that was never mine. The contradiction cut deeper because this wasn't new. Years ago, back in 2012, she had drawn her line in the sand. She had told him flat out she would never submit, that she wasn't one of his pawns, wasn't a woman waiting for a crown he carved from words. She had been crystal clear about boundaries, and yet a decade later, he was back at it, trying to rewrite her life in real time. He wanted the world to see me as his, she said quietly, almost to herself, but I wasn't his. I was never his, I'm married, and I never gave him permission. Those words cut through the podcast like a blade slicing through fabric. The audience sat frozen because in that moment, it stopped being entertainment. It wasn't gossip anymore. It was revelation. To Umar, the camera was never just a lens. It was a stage, a pulpit, a weapon, a god. Every time that red light blinked, he became larger than life, feeding off the audience's gaze like oxygen. To him, the live stream was everything, but to Anaya, sitting on the other side of that glowing screen, it was something darker. It wasn't just content, it wasn't just a moment, it was the theft of her reality, the rewriting of her story without her consent. In her calm but unshakable voice, she told Tasha K, "That was the moment I knew he would never change." From 2012 to 2021, the game was the same. The only difference was the stage got bigger. Her words cut through the air like a blade, leaving silence where laughter had been just moments earlier. Because this wasn't gossip anymore, it was testimony, it was confession, and yet her story didn't stop there. She leaned forward, her voice carrying a warning for anyone listening. What came next, she said, was stranger, more humiliating, almost surreal. Just a few months after that live stream, as summer heat gave way to fall, Umar began hyping an event like no other. September 11th, he promised, would be history in the making. He called it the grand opening of FDMG Academy. He pushed the message everywhere he could, flyers plastered on social media, fiery speeches shouted into microphones, slick promo videos cut together with swelling music. He painted a picture of triumph, of destiny fulfilled, of a dream finally touching the ground. The way he told it, you would think the world was about to shift on its axis. Supporters clung to every word, imagining classrooms lined neatly with desks, chalkboards waiting for lessons, hallways echoing with the footsteps of black children finally stepping into a school built for them, by them, donors who had given their savings, their paychecks, sometimes even money they could barely afford, believed this was their day of vindication. This was when the years of sacrifice would bear fruit. Parents envisioned their children walking proudly through doors that had been locked and shuttered for far too long. They were ready to clap, ready to cheer, ready to cry tears of joy at the sight of a vision finally turned into bricks and mortar. The buzz spread like wildfire. Vendors lined up to sell food, clothes, and trinkets. Fashion shows were whispered about. Guest speakers promised. Photo ops teased. For the community, September 11th wasn't just a date, it was deliverance. It was supposed to be the culmination of nearly a decade of waiting. But what Anaya would soon reveal was that behind the glossy flyers and booming speeches, the reality was nothing like the dream. But according to Anaya, behind the glossy promotion was a completely different plan. She revealed on the podcast that what Umar was really preparing wasn't an educational milestone. It was a wedding. Not just one wedding, but a polygamous ceremony staged inside the same broken down gym that was supposed to be the heartbeat of the academy. Yes, the man who had raised funds for years in the name of children was allegedly planning to transform that gym into his personal stage, marrying multiple women at once.
Now, according to IRS Form 990, the filings reveal disturbing financial irregularities, with Jermaine Sherman. That's how he files it. He doesn't file it under Dr. Umar Sherman. It's Jermaine.
And the most shocking part, he expected her to be at the center of it. He thought I was going to be part of that circus, she said, her voice steady but edged with steel. He thought I was going to stand there smiling next to him while he played husband to whoever else lined up. The podcast audience gasped. Even Tasha K, who rarely flinches at scandal, leaned forward with wide eyes, because this wasn't about flirtation or rumor anymore. This was about a man allegedly orchestrating a public polygamy stunt under the banner of what was supposed to be an educational triumph. And according to Anaya, she wasn't just invited, she was supposed to be the centerpiece. As she described it, her voice cracked just enough to reveal the sting. I told him I was married. I told him no, but he still thought he could put me in front of the world like I was his property. The image was almost impossible to imagine. Dr. Umar Johnson, self-proclaimed Pan-African leader, not unveiling classrooms, not showcasing accreditation, but staging a wedding show inside a decaying gym. The contradiction left viewers glued to their screens, jaws tight, eyes wide. And then came the detail that pulled gasps from even the most skeptical. In the weeks before the supposed grand opening, Anaya was contacted by another woman named Candace. This wasn't about logistics or volunteering. Candace casually asked her for her dress size, then told her to be ready to participate in a wedding scene during the fashion show. At first, Anaya thought it had to be a joke, maybe some symbolic skit, but as the days passed, she realized the nightmare was real. Umar wasn't just toying with the idea, he had choreographed it. He was planning to stand in front of cameras and make multiple women his wives right there on the supposed opening day, and she was slated to stand as wife number one. Imagine the disrespect, she told Tasha, shaking her head. I never agreed to that. I never signed up for that. And yet my name, my body, my life was being used as if it already belonged to him. The chat went insane. Some typed, "This man is wild." Others wrote, "The school was never the point." Every time her voice wrapped around his name, Dr. Umar Johnson, it landed heavier. dragging his reputation down piece by piece. Because according to her, September 11th wasn't about opening FDMG for children, it was about opening a stage for himself. He didn't invite classrooms, he invited cameras, he didn't invite students, he invited vendors, and instead of unveiling lessons for children, he unveiled his polygamy fantasy. But the sharpest cut came next. That very night, the truth about her own marriage came crashing into the spotlight. She had tried to shield her private life, tried to protect her husband from unnecessary chaos, but now Umar's circus dragged her reality into the dirt. She revealed that one of the elders in Umar's circle whispered the truth to him before the event, that she was already married, and the look on his face, she said, was priceless, pure shock. He couldn't believe I wasn't his, she said. He even said it out loud. Not Anaya, not her, because in his head, I already belonged to him.
And the bank told me to enter my 16-digit card number. I did that. They told me they had no record of my account. They had no record of my account.
For years, he had carried the fantasy that one day she would stand beside him. And when reality hit, his face betrayed it all. Yes, Umar still went through with the staged vows. Yes, he still stood with other women and smiled for the pictures. He still tried to spin it as a community celebration. But for her, the mask had slipped for good. She didn't stay. She refused to let her image be used any longer. I left before the vows, she told Tasha. I got on the bus back to New York. I wasn't going to be his prop. That decision was her line in the sand, the moment she refused to be an accessory to his fantasy. And from that day forward, the questions grew louder. Where were the tax receipts for the donations? Where was the accreditation? Where were the permits that every real school must have? Anaya said she never once saw donors get paperwork, never saw official documentation, nothing but empty promises. People gave him money for years, she said. And what did they get? Abandoned buildings and a wedding stunt. The chat lit up like fire. Some screamed fraud, others demanded proof, but Anaya pressed harder, dropping memory after memory. She reminded them of the day Umar snapped on a supporter who had donated only $5. He literally cursed him out, she said. What kind of leader humiliates someone for giving what they can? If you're for the people, you thank them. You don't shame them. Then she dropped another bombshell. Outside a Harlem church, she said, tensions once boiled so hot over money that a fight nearly broke out. And she was there, pregnant at the time. She described physically stepping between angry men, shoving them apart, screaming for calm. She begged them not to pull out their phones, not to record, because she knew if that footage went viral, Umar's brand would collapse overnight. Even after everything, she admitted, I was still protecting him. And he didn't even see it. Her voice cracked, but her resolve held. That's who he is. He takes and he takes. And when you stand up, he calls you a hater. He called me queen when I supported him. But the second I refused, I became an enemy. Then she turned to the camera, locking eyes with the audience. Dr. Umar Johnson, you will not control this narrative. Not anymore. The room froze. Tasha let silence stretch, letting the words sink deep. And then Anaya swung with the final blow. She explained his system, how he used spiritual language as weapons, calling women queens, goddesses, mothers of the movement, making them feel chosen, divine, untouchable, and once they believed, once they gave him their money.
You know, you've been getting a lot of slack about your school. People saying, what's going on with the school? I
love the good and the bad. Let them hate. So hate is the oxygen I use to elevate. Hate me if you want.
Tell them, when we talked about the school, first give them an update of where you are with the school.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, first of all, 2014, I took my first donation for FDMG in St. Louis, Missouri. 2019, we purchased a 4-building former black charter school campus in Wilmington, Delaware. That's where we are. This is 2025, so 5 years to buy the school, 6 years to renovate the school. Right now, all renovations are done except we got to tile the floor and rekey the classrooms. Cosmetic surgery. Once we tile the floor and rekey the classrooms, which will be done by the end of this summer, we're going to apply for our certificate of occupancy. And once we get our certificate of occupancy, we're going to have a grand opening celebration and all y'all better be there. But if you hated on me, keep your ass in Cleveland.
Like, Dr. Umar is not a real person that anybody should be taking any advice from. I hope that we all understand that, but it seems like some folks are...
Their loyalty, sometimes their bodies, he moved on. It's a cycle, she declared, and I broke it. I said, no. I walked away. The chat exploded. Fire emojis flooded in. Supporters cheered her bravery. Others dropped screenshots of their own donation receipts, demanding accountability, but Anaya stayed calm. She told them this wasn't revenge, it was warning. I'm married now, I've moved on, but there are women still getting caught up, and they need to know who he really is. By then, the image of Umar Johnson had cracked wide open. He wasn't just the fiery speaker or the Pan-African preacher. According to her, he was a man who led with sexual advances, who turned schools into wedding stages, who shamed donors instead of thanking them, who delivered empty walls where children's futures were supposed to stand. And then she made her final promise. Holding up her phone, she told the world, I still have the receipts. I still have the text. I still have the proof. And if he comes for me, I will release them all. The audience gasped. Tasha smirked knowingly. The chat went pure chaos. Because if she had proof, if her words were backed by text, screenshots, receipts, then Umar wasn't just in gossip. He was standing at the edge of exposure, cornered, stripped, and dangling on the cliff of public collapse. And when the stream ended, one question echoed like thunder across every mind watching. If this is what one woman revealed, how many more are out there waiting?